Hi, Claudio. Welcome to BetterTech. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. And before we get into today's topic, can you kindly introduce yourself for our audience?
Hi, thank you, Anna. It's a pleasure to be on with you. So I'm Claudio Bartolini. My background is primarily in software engineering and the themes that I've been working on during my career, which spans over 25 years now. It's been primarily cloud and analytics. So I've been in a number of roles, both in management and as an individual contributor at various companies. So I've been moving back and forth from management, essentially always working primarily via influence more than essentially by having established large groups. I am at Equinix since last year, where I work in the office of the CTO as a fellow in technology and architecture, and the themes that we're looking at is essentially helping companies with their digital transformation.
Right. So correct me if I'm wrong. So you move between a management and a technical role?
Yes. I've been kind of going back and forth, and the last, I would say the last 3 years, the last 2 jobs that I've had, I was a box prior to Equinix, and even a box that was working as a principal architect. So it's kind of leadership roles in technology within the engineering and product organizations, but primarily really working via influence as an individual contributor, which I think kind of works better for me in a way. Over time in my career, I've realized that is kind of my sweet spot. Right.
So Claudio, what do you think, what's new in the world of software engineering?
Oh, yes. So there's plenty to choose from. I mean, obviously, we have big themes of AI and machine learning, augmented reality and blockchain, but something that is closer to what my primary interests are is this movement to low code and no code, the infrastructure as code, and the emergence of the citizen developer, where a citizen developer has been defined as a user who creates essentially new applications, new business applications, by putting together systems that are developed by others, by putting together pieces within their system, for their services that are provided by corporate IT and other things. So the emergence of cloud, of course, has helped a lot with that. The infrastructure as code movement is the blending of is essentially associated to the DevOps movement, and it's been the blending of developers and operations, seeing that in operations more and more we are using really skills of software engineers and putting together things. So essentially, there's a lot of automation coming together, and all of the systems providing their APIs and declaring their contract, so that we see all of class of users that are not just consumer of these services, but essentially are composers of basic services to provide new services for other uses and purposes.
So speaking of that, what's the central role of APIs in digital transformation? What exactly is it, and what does it mean to be API first?
Yes, so an API first approach is thinking of, it's almost like thinking of the API itself as a user for the application. So it sounds strange, but that's essentially it's the API is really the contract of the service, and there's various ways to look at APIs when we are thinking about leading digital transformation, because primarily there's 2 primary functions. So in a way, if we go back to the famous Bezos' mandate at Amazon. So APIs were what let engineering organizations scale. So a lot of people know about the sort of the two pizzas team, right, from Amazon and some of the folklore and software engineering. Fewer people probably know about what Bezos' mandate was, but when essentially Jeff Bezos said that each of the teams will create systems that communicate with one another through by exposing service interfaces, and all communication must actually go through, say, the front doors of what these services are. So it's sort of a share nothing architecture by reducing dependencies on the backends that these teams will use, reducing dependencies on enforcing a common technical stack. And that has done miracles for the way that Amazon engineering, AWS engineering after that has been scaling out to the scale that cloud is today. So in engineering, one big aspect of what API first enforces is this ability to really scale out. For product, what API first does is when you see companies like Twilio, like Stripe, like Auth0 that has now been acquired by Okta in the security space, you see that these companies have been able to looking at their own APIs as the primary product that they produce, and therefore this ability of putting together some components to actually create new functionalities and support new use cases have been incredibly effective in a way of transforming the company into a platform essentially, and putting out new products with very little effort. So Twilio, for example, put together a complete solution for call centers, which is called Twilio Flex, in a quarter or two, which would take an inordinate amount of time in more traditional waterfall kind of engineering, just because their engineers could build on API-based products that other parts of the companies were creating for them. So there's two aspects really in product and in engineering that makes it so that API first actually brings a number of advantages to a company transforming digitally into a platform kind of company.
And what's the difference between API as a product and API as a mediation architecture?
Right. So what needs to happen? So when we think about these two aspects, right? The dimensions that we were looking at. One was the sort of basis mandate. So when companies think of APIs from the engineering point of view, the trend is really from the inside out. We're thinking of, for example, coming with programs for what is called breaking the monolith and moving to a microservices architecture. So API obviously play a primary role in that. But when engineering thinks of it, the trend is really from the inside out. We have our endpoints, we want to expose them externally. API as product is really kind of the idea instead of looking at this world from the outside in. So really thinking at API as the product itself that you're creating. Therefore, the kind of design wants to be intentional, and you're starting with the interfaces there. So the best pattern for an architecture that spans these two, that actually bridges the gap, reducing the impedance mismatch between these two worlds, has to be based on mediation, right? So a mediation layer for architecture is the primary pattern that companies manage to put in place to really ensure separation of duty between these two worlds, and making sure that when those two components can evolve independently. Because when you're thinking about the velocity and the pace of evolution that your system in the engineering worlds need to have, the company kind of controls both sides on the interface. So Dependencies are resolved much faster. There's the roadmap is usually defined from the from the point of view of the evolution of the internal services. So that is a much higher pace, a much higher velocity of change. When you're thinking about product, stability instead is value, right? So when you put an API out there and your partners and third-party developers and someone outside your organization starts building on it, then you really want to be intentional about a migration strategy and evolution strategy. And so what the mediation architecture does for this essentially consists in a layer where some of the endpoints are essentially what power this kind of APIs, right, in our parlance. Some of the endpoints that are internal gets exposed externally, but rather than having that inside out motion from engineering of thinking everything I have like kind of given a pane of glass through which you see internally, the product organization wants to be intentional about designing the contract of what should support our third-party developers, our citizen developers, what should support our own internal systems, and what should support our partners. So essentially, mediation kind of means you don't directly connect a portal with your internal APIs. You don't directly let your third-party developers connect to your microservices and their APIs as your internal developers would. You really need to ensure this separation between the two to let them evolve each at their own pace.
And to what extent do you think CIOs and CTOs are involved in this process?
Yes, so extending to the various C-level executives, I think I would also consider that CPOs, the chief product officer, would have a large say in this process. Okay. And depending on how, really depending on how the various companies structure themselves, right? But CTOs are usually looking at technology and innovation. And so it's very important, usually the CTOs, that the way that I see the pattern that tends to emerge is like a successful company that started with from a wildly successful product and move on later to a platform kind of idea, right? So where they specialize for creating suites of products that relate to get together, or over time, they must become a lot more nimble at management and acquisitions, right? At integrating different software. So the CTOs really could drive some of that transformation to a platform company by embracing this mentality. Same thing for essentially the senior VPs of engineering, right? The CIO also has kind of a vested interest in moving to an API world. It's more looking at the internal business systems, but for example, CIOs will welcome the idea of moving to architectures that are not just point-to-point connectors, right? But more of an ecosystem of various services that they put together and essentially have those defined by their APIs, interfaces, and created the workflow and the orchestrations that connects those together. So the CIOs will more look internally rather than the exposing kind of APIs. Okay. And that would be it.
And would you say that the CPO is the star of this whole process then, the one that's bringing it all together?
I think absolutely it is, from the point of view of having transforming the company to a place where the whole product organization really looks at API as a first-class artifact, right? Rather than thinking of say a website or a portal or as some kind of physical systems, right? So APIs as a product is really fundamental to this view. So absolutely, yes, I think you're right in that. And especially this kind of view should permeate the whole product management organization, with product managers that are trained to look at developers as a persona, right? As well as depending on who they are, your knowledge worker as a persona or your network engineer as a persona, right? Thinking about developers as a persona is something that needs to change. So the CPO has definitely a central role in this kind of transformation.
Right. Makes sense. And lastly, Claudio, how do you think digital transformation is going to be driven like 5-10 years from now by APIs?
So as pretty much on a few of the aspects that we have touched in this short conversation, I think when we think about digital transformation, the companies that are going to be wildly successful are the ones that are going to create ecosystems, essentially, are those that will positions themselves as broker of services. Like I'm taking, for example, Equinix, the company I'm now at the moment, so which provides digital infrastructure. Right? Equinix has been extremely successful at brokering services such as bringing together in a co-location context network service providers and now service providers, and then enterprises from various industries and sectors such as manufacturing, food and beverage, all that you like, but essentially bringing all of these people together. And what Equinix is being successful as doing has been providing neutrality and acting as a brokers of the services together by connecting pipes of bytes, essentially, by doing it at the network level. So when digital transformation happens, a lot of these services that get brokered will move to the software world. Then essentially API drive these transformations, and the APIs drive this transformation in that they provide the sort of connectivity, the standard connectivity for services, right? The way that the power interfaces, the power plug, the network interfaces that we have today have been working for digital infrastructure, they would work for digital services. So essentially moving to creating an ecosystem where various players will come in, present their APIs, and you can, some successful company can essentially broker services to provide higher value services in turn to their customers. I think this is how we see digital transformation be driven by APIs.
Right. Well, that wraps up our episode for today. Thank you, Claudio, for joining us on BetterTech. It's
great to be on with you, and it's been a great conversation. Thank you so much for having me.